Good, happy Tuesday evening, March 1st, 2022. I'm Riley King. Welcome to this Tuesday evening edition of the Riley King Newscast, right here on the Riley King Network. We have a lot of news to get to this Tuesday evening, so let's get started right now. First up, war in Ukraine looms large over State of the Union. Let's take a listen to that video from CBS News.
More people should be a comfort keeper because the world really works and is based off just helping you.
Good evening on this busy night here in Washington. In a short time, President Biden will deliver his first State of the Union address amid growing challenges both at home and abroad. Russia's war in Ukraine is escalating with missile attacks against government buildings and accusations of war crimes leveled against the Kremlin. Human rights groups say Russian troops are targeting hospitals and schools. And a U.S. official tells CBS News that Russian forces could isolate the city of Kyiv in a week and take the capital 30 days after that. The president spoke by phone today with Ukraine's President Zelensky for about 30 minutes. The State of the Union speech, which is traditionally heavy on domestic issues, tonight will begin with Ukraine. And we're getting an early look at the speech and what the president will say. He'll say when dictators do not pay a price for their aggression, they cause more chaos. We have got a team of reporters with the latest from Ukraine. But first, let's go to CBS's Nancy Cordes at the White House. Nancy?
Nora, I'm told that President Biden will go directly after the Russian president tonight. And according to excerpts just released, he'll say that Vladimir Putin miscalculated. Quote, he thought the West and NATO wouldn't respond, and he thought he could divide us here at home. But Putin was wrong, and we were ready. This high-profile speech has been written and rewritten again in response to changing world events. President Biden donned a blue and yellow tie today, Ukraine's national colors, as he spoke by phone with Ukraine's president, holed up in an underground bunker. Zelensky said they discussed his need for more defense assistance as Russian bombing intensifies. The U.S. and its allies unleashed more economic firepower today, Apple halting all product sales in Russia as Visa and MasterCard blocked Russian banks from their networks. Ford suspended operations in Russia following GM's lead. And the operator of the new Nord Stream 2 natural gas pipeline from Russia to Germany filed for bankruptcy in the face of crippling sanctions. But fears of a worldwide shortage forced oil prices up more than 10% today to their highest level in 7 years, even after other oil-producing nations, including the U.S., agreed to release 60 million barrels of crude from their reserves. A gallon of gas now costs 24 cents more than it did just a month ago.
We are not able to afford it anymore. Prices are going up with food and everything else.
And yet a new CBS News poll finds overwhelming support for U.S. sanctions on Russia. And Ukraine is the number one issue Americans want to hear about tonight, ahead of the economy, inflation, and the coronavirus. As the pandemic recedes, the social distancing required at last year's joint address has been eliminated, and masks will be optional. What has returned is the fortress-like security at the Capitol, a legacy of the January 6th insurrection. The State of the Union address can be a polarizing affair, but tonight both sides are showing solidarity with Ukraine. Take a look at this. 150 lawmakers donned blue and yellow for a photo on the Capitol steps earlier today. And sitting with the First Lady tonight will be Ukraine's ambassador to the U.S., a powerful signal to the world, Nora, about the strength of this alliance.
Nancy Cordes at the White House. Thanks.
Quick question for you.
Okay, and there you go on that video and that report. Deadly attacks targeted populated Ukraine cities. Let's take a listen to that video from CBS News.
Let's turn now to Ukraine, where on day 6, Russians targeted civilians in 2 of the country's biggest cities. In a sign of how dire the situation is, President Zelensky told the European Parliament that his country is fighting for survival. CBS's Chris Livesay is in the city of Lviv in western Ukraine. Good evening, Chris.
Good evening, Nora. Tonight, a U.S. official confirms to CBS News that the U.S. will directly provide Stinger anti-aircraft missiles to the Ukrainian military. This as the Russian military rains down missiles of its own on Ukrainian cities. A quiet city street turned into fire and rubble. The Ukrainian Interior Ministry says at least 10 people were killed and dozens injured in Ukraine's second largest city of Kharkiv. This as fears grow that Russian forces are increasingly putting populated areas in their crosshairs. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky called today's missile attack a war crime and claimed it wasn't a legitimate target. Russian air power attacked the airwaves, knocking out TV stations in Kyiv and killing 5 people, Ukrainian emergency services said. All while ground forces tried to encircle Kyiv with this noose, a convoy stretching 40 miles long north of the capital. But a U.S. official tells CBS News that it's barely moved in the past 24 hours due to fuel and supply shortages. Those trying to flee go by any route necessary, including this makeshift bridge. But fighting continues, and 2 cities in the south are reportedly surrounded, including Mariupol, where mothers and their newborns have been forced to take shelter in a hospital basement. Russian video shows an attack helicopter flying low over Ukrainian fields before Russian soldiers dismount in what was claimed to be a special operation. But a U.S. official tells CBS News that the invasion is not proceeding as quickly as Putin hoped, as Ukrainian forces like these, and even civilians like these blocking a Russian tank, have shown impressive resolve despite the odds. Nevertheless, a U.S. official confirms to CBS News that the attack is bound to encircle Russia within a week, and Russia could take the entire city within 30 days after that. Nora?
Chris Livesay with all that new reporting. Thank you.
Okay, and there you go on that video and that report. Ukrainian refugees flee to neighboring countries. Let's take a listen to that video from CBS News.
Realtor.com's new collaboration tools made it easy for Romeo and I to find the right home.
Without the drama.
Well, as the Russian bombardment intensifies, the number of civilians fleeing Ukraine to neighboring countries has reached nearly 700,000. The crowd's getting so large that the wait time at some checkpoints is now around 5 days. CBS's Christina Raffini is at the border of Ukraine and Poland.
More than 400,000 Ukrainians have already made the long, cold journey to Poland, and more are on the way.
I don't want to leave, but it's completely dangerous to stay here.
The EU says 4 million people could be forced to flee.
So we're on the Ukrainian side of the Medica border crossing. All these people have been walking all night to get here, and they still have to wait to get into Poland.
At this receiving center in Shemush, a few miles away, volunteers from all over Europe have come to offer free rides, work, and places to stay.
We have to do something.
Friedrich Huttner drove from Germany and says Europeans have been much more divided about taking in refugees from other non-European conflicts.
Racial is always a very hard and bad word, but for a fact it's easier to take in people from the same continent.
And there are reports of African and Middle Eastern refugees having trouble leaving Ukraine. Across the parking lot, Natalia and her family loaded into another volunteer van. Thank you, she says, to the kind people who helped them.
Now, in addition to private citizens, a couple of the hotels here in Rzeszów are offering free rooms to refugees. Train tickets are free for Ukrainians. All they have to do is show their passport. And the company Airbnb says it will offer free short-term housing to 100,000 refugees. Nora?
Christina Raffini, thank you.
Hey, what's wrong?
Okay, there you go on that video and that report. And we are going to switch gears now, and let's go into weather for this evening. In Boston, 33 degrees. New York City, 38 degrees. Washington, D.C., 40 degrees. Atlanta, 40 degrees. Jacksonville, Florida, 46 degrees. Tampa Bay, Florida, 54 degrees. And Miami, Florida, 67 degrees. Dallas, 42 degrees. Phoenix, 53 degrees. Las Vegas, 48 degrees. Los Angeles, 52 degrees. And San Francisco, 47 degrees. That is a look at the weather across the United States for this evening. And that does it for this evening edition of the Riley King Newscast, right here on the Riley King Network. Thank you for tuning in and watching. Have a great evening. Good night. Goodbye, everyone.